exploring the investment landscape with a guru's wisdom and a strategist's insight. Good Life Companies presents The Market Enthusiast with Noah Brooks and Chris Needs.
Welcome back to another installment of The Market Enthusiast. I'm Noah Brooks, and with me, Chris Needs.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome, everybody. We just ended January, right?
Yes, sir.
How did January go?
It was largely a good month. We had some good numbers. Dow, S&P, squarely in the green. We had tech lagging a little bit for the month. NASDAQ was still positive, a little over 1.5%, I think. But in terms of S&P sectors, the technology sector was the only one in the negative. So
in January here in Pennsylvania, we're supposed to have the two coldest weeks of the year in the end of January. That's what I was talking about.
Oh, it was cold.
It was freezing.
And then this Punxsutawney Phil guy came out. And
6 more weeks.
Yeah, madness. I've been seeing some questionable stats on him, so I don't know if we should trust that guy.
I feel basically it says that his shadow doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
I feel like when I was a child, a young kid, Groundhog's Day was like a big deal, right? And may have peaked with the movie Groundhog's Day, and then all of a sudden I didn't even really think about it until they said that he saw a shadow, didn't see a shadow. I don't know.
It's like 83% of the time he sees it, so it's like, I don't know. It doesn't seem scientific.
We did have a good January in the markets. Overall, everything was up. I think you mentioned technology was the only sector that was down for the month. And we had a pretty good growth value tilt here. We had value and small caps actually outperformed large cap growth for the first time in a few months. So
financials, obviously, which you have a lot of the regionals in the small and mid caps. Financials across cap sizes did very well.
Yeah. Healthcare and financials were both up 6% in January. And financials actually were the best performer last year, if I'm not mistaken. And so a little bit of continuation on there. And I think the question on everybody's mind, certainly allocators like us, is, we're kind of continuing to wait for small companies and mid-sized companies to start to roar back to life, where it's not just large cap technology that continues to win and win. Mm-hmm. And last time we had this happen, it was August, where small caps led pretty dramatically out of large cap growth, and then it just kind of reverted back to tech and large cap growth.
Yeah, another little taste. Now it maybe was a little bit of flows out of some of the mega caps. Obviously, we had some big news out of China that sort of affected some flows, which
you want to talk about Deepseek a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So we had the Deepseek, what was it called, the R1 algorithm that came out, that they basically claimed they produced for only $5.6 million. Now, I don't believe that at all.
They being
China. And the data out of China is a little suspect. So, it's not really a number that you can believe, but it certainly had an effect on U.S. markets and Nvidia, Microsoft, OpenAI. Of course, we had just announced Stargate. I think it was like the Thursday or Friday right before that. So great timing there.
So let's explore this for a second. So President Trump is inaugurated. There's a flow of information. They announced a $500 billion project, Stargate, to develop, better software, artificial intelligence. And like 3 days later,
during the 2 hours that TikTok was brought down early, China released this. I don't know. It seems coincidental, and we don't believe in coincidences, do we?
My dad always used to say there's no such thing as a coincidence. I don't think
this was them flexing their power.
I think that's what it was.
But we found out it was essentially trained off of probably a number of different existing, areas. But ChatGPT noticed tons of data flow out of their chat GPT from the developer accounts, which is normal. They allow people to have developer accounts. They call it distillation, where basically people are training smaller, less powerful algorithms or large language models on their information. And turns out it was a number of accounts from China basically training this Deepseek.
So you have China coming out with their own version of ChatGPT. They say that essentially they did it for peanuts, for $6 million. It works better. It doesn't need Nvidia Blackwell chips. There's a blogger out there that writes a short thesis, not short in length, it's 12,000 words, short regarding Nvidia, shorting Nvidia. And Monday morning we wake up and Nvidia is down
18% on the day.
Down. And what was the dollar value on that?
$593 billion in market cap was wiped out on that Monday alone. Obviously, by far the largest single day drawdown in terms of market cap size in history. But it was also larger than 487 S&P 500 companies. That drawdown alone.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
That is wild. I mean, it's amazing to think that they're that big in general.
Yeah. Well, they were nearing 4 trillion basically when they were up over, I think they got up to like 154 or so per share.
Yeah. You and I were discussing this the other day. We were talking about the difference over let's say the last 10 years between Nvidia and Intel. And, me growing up in the 90s, Intel was the king of chips, right? So AMD was around and Lattice Semi was around, and there was a bunch of other semiconductors around, but Windows ran on Intel, right? When I started, I used to work selling computers. When I was in school at Staples, we started with a 486, and that was the beginning of my knowledge of Intel, and they've been making great PC chips for a long time. But somewhere along the time, they've lost their way. And companies like Nvidia and AMD have really taken over the GPU markets. We were talking about this, the drawdown in Nvidia was almost $600 billion. We started talking about the market cap of Intel, and we looked it up. And today, right now, Intel is worth $83 billion.
Yeah.
And after the drawdown. And so Nvidia has not really rebounded. It came back a little bit. I think it got up to 130. But last time I looked, it was still in the 119 range.
Yeah.
So the information that came out, even though it might be fake, it has had, and we're about
not fake, just inaccurate.
Inaccurate. Because they do have this Deepseek. That's not fake. That's a real thing.
One of the most popular parts of it is it. So ChatGPT, you send a question, it just spits out your answer. But they say there's this cool feature where it kind of shows its reasoning. Like it goes along and says, well, because you said this, and then it gives like another answer beyond that. And they like how it sort of reasons as it's speaking to you with a response and with the information. But yeah, there's definitely more than 5.6 million in investment, and a lot of it was trained off of other systems. Someone had asked it a question, what version are you? And it replied, I'm ChatGPT version 3.5. And it's like, well,
so let me ask you this. What does it matter where it was trained? Right. So if ChatGPT was trained on the internet in general, and a large language model, so it basically goes out, it collects all the data, and it has it kind of at its fingertips when you're asking a question. So what does it matter if Deepseek was trained on ChatGPT or any other large language model?
I think it's just like a little bit of a shortcut. They, instead of doing the reasoning, the scraping, the large language model doing the inference itself, it's sort of taking a shortcut and using the trained responses from ChatGPT already. So it's like they cut out maybe 90% of the computing requirements to get to that same
Now,
information.
I'm not a Deepseek. I didn't download it. I don't really want any. Well,
if TikTok was bad, I can only imagine how bad Deepseek is.
Yeah.
If we're talking about
and I'm
security.
sure people will come back to me and say, "Well, you already have all this stuff on your phone or your computer. What are you worried about Deepseek?" I'm just not going to actively put it on there. But what if training it on another LLM is really just a more efficient way of learning?
I definitely think it is, certainly. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing how they got to where they're at. Now you have OpenAI, of course, pushing back and saying, well, we have in our user agreement that you can't distill large pieces of information, so on and so forth. Certain legalese that they haven't yet used to like push back on people with, but now they will, it sounds like. But that's not the issue. But the good thing about this is, and we were talking about this, is but it shows 5.6 million isn't real. But it probably is real that they're not doing it on cutting edge chips unless they did steal them. They do have Nvidia chips hiding somewhere, which is possible. They claimed it was off of Chinese produced chips.
What is the difference between the best AMD chip and the Blackwell, which is currently the best Nvidia chip in terms of processing and computing power? I mean, how far apart are they?
For training AI models, it's estimated to be about 30% difference. Nvidia's chip is 30% more productive in training.
When that,
but it's also, I think, about 120% the price.
Yeah.
So they want to be on the cutting edge. It's an arms race, so they still want the best.
So you can get 2 AMD chips for the price of 1 Nvidia chip, and you have more than double the computing power with 2 of the chips at the same price.
Yeah, I guess there's something to be said for the connections, the data stacks, and how they speak together. It's like a multiplicative effect. But yeah, you would think AMD wouldn't be in the struggle bus as much as they've been. Well, they really have been.
It's not as bad as Intel.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. They made a lot of bad capital allocation decisions over the years. They got into certain segments a little late and committed a lot of capital at poor times, and they've been having a rough go of it.
So I want to go back to this. I had in my mind, I always think like, is the AI race the next Cold War? Right? We were racing for nuclear weapons in the 60s, 70s, 80s until the fall of the Soviet Union, and now we're racing against China and certainly other countries for technology. Is the AI race the next Cold War? And was this the first salvo in a skirmish? Right? I mean, do they come in China? Does China come in, and do they have a lot more dry powder that they could hurt the American economy? And I don't mean with the cyber warfare. That is certainly possible. But like the idea that we are so far advanced and these Nvidia chips are so far advanced and all of our AI is so far advanced, are they just thinking, we're going to just let this drib out over the next 2, 3, 4 years? Especially when we're faced with tariffs, right? We didn't talk tariffs yet, but that's kind of where my brain goes to. I mean, it is a coincidence that they released this right when they did, right?
Right. We talked about the data flows from the distillation. They said that was occurring mostly in November and December. So it seems like they've had this trained since about that time, and they waited 2 or 3 weeks to actually debut it and really let it out.
When did Deepseek, do you know when it came out onto the App Store?
I don't. I recall hearing it the Thursday and Friday before it really got popular.
Why the hell is it allowed on the App Store?
Yeah.
I mean, Tim Cook, if you're listening, I don't know that he listens all the time, but he definitely listens here and there. Why is Deepseek allowed on the App Store? I don't get it.
They pay the same fee everybody else pays, I guess.
Now, you had an interesting theory about Apple and the App Store earlier today. We were kind of prepping for this, and let me hear your theory. Let's put it out. Let's share it with the audience, because I found it interesting. I don't know that I fully am behind it, but your theory was something like AI, Apple doesn't really have any AI, so they're just going to take a slice of everybody else's.
Yeah, so they have contracted out in a non-exclusive deal with OpenAI for basically to get it on their iPhones and everything, but they haven't committed capital to developing their own large language model. They've sort of been, out in the cold, as we'll say, which it actually benefited them when this Deepseek stuff came down because they weren't affected by it. They haven't allocated hundreds of billions of dollars like the other hyperscalers have. But my perspective was, all right, what if they are just allowing these people to blow 100, 150, 200 billion dollars creating all these LLMs, and they're just sitting back knowing, half of, again, we'll say 40% of people in the US have iPhones. So they're going to have to put all of those LLMs on the Apple store and pay Apple, whatever the fee is, 5-10% of their revenue, ad revenue that comes on the app. And they're just going to reap those little benefits. They'll have no overhead. It's just pure profit for them. And everybody's going to have probably 1 or 2 or 3 different apps for AI technology on their phones. Apple's just going to be sort of collecting small percentage royalties on it. And that's sort of going along with their subscription income that they've sort of transitioned to since they haven't had any real groundbreaking products come out since the iPhone.
Yeah. What about the Apple car?
Yeah, what about it? I wonder how much did that cost them? 100 billion in R&D that we'll never see.
It's interesting that Apple, I mean, I don't want to say they don't have anything new. They have lots of new stuff, but it's all just better versions of their old stuff.
I mean, Tim Cook was an operations guy. We all know where the creation came from, and it died with Steve Jobs, unfortunately. It seems like I'm surprised someone hasn't risen up and taken over the creative genius, because they had to buy out Beats by Dre to sort of do that. Like, they could create that themselves. Well, they did have success with the AirPods, I guess.
Yeah.
They sold a lot of them.
Yeah.
People lose them all the time, so it's like a
All the
recurring
time. All the
recurring revenue for them.
So just going back to your I don't think it's a conspiracy theory, just theory in general.
Postulation.
Yeah, hypothesize on it that Apple's just going to take a share of everything that's sold on the App Store. That by itself is pretty straightforward, but the fact that they're waiting to develop their own, or about the possibility of just buying a company that maybe operationally isn't making it, but the technology is definitely there.
Yeah, think about all the hyperscalers out here blowing all this money, and then you think of maybe the old school, like, there's Anthropic, there is out there, like some of these old AI plays who have been building these models for a while now, who eventually someone's going to bust. Not everybody can spend all this and make it. Someone's going to lose out here. And what's the cash pile that Apple has? You're right. They could just step in, swoop in, and save
250 billion or something.
Get all that IP. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's a conspiracy theory. I think it would be a great operational prospect to be able to do something like that.
You could spend $250 billion just on hardware and research, and then you have to pay all the programmers and hope it works. Or you could just sit back, wait, and then buy one for $100 billion.
I guess my question, and I don't, obviously I don't have a programming background, but I wonder how many differences, or what types of differences there are between the different large language models that all these other companies are developing. I mean, I watch some tennis, and IBM is a big sponsor of like the US Open and some of the smaller tennis events out there, and they've been advertising Watson for, I don't know, a decade, which is their artificial intelligence program. Now recently IBM has kind of come alive a little bit. I think some of that has to do with quantum computing, a little bit of artificial intelligence, as well as actually making some money these days, where they were underperforming pretty dramatically for a long time. But I wonder how different their AI Watson is from ChatGPT or any of these other large language models out there. You know what? We should get somebody on here to tell us.
You know anyone?
I don't know anyone.
Watson has been out for a long time though.
Yeah,
I mean,
but I don't know. Actually, now that I say it, I don't know that it's a large language model. It's definitely a data model,
some
smart
sort of
software,
algorithm. Yeah.
but I don't know that it actually can answer, questions like a large language model. That brings me back a little bit. You might be too young. I don't know. Do you remember Ask Jeeves?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I remember I was at my buddy Billy's house, my neighborhood friend, and he showed it to me for the first time. I'm like, what is this? You just ask it anything?
Yeah, you ask it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so ChatGPT could have been Ask Jeeves or vice versa. It was really an interesting concept. Instead of searching for something and then having to go figure out through the results of the search, it would actually answer a question for you. Now, it definitely does not work or did not work. I don't know that it's still in existence. We'll have to circle back on that one.
Someone should bring it back.
Yeah. But that's what they were going for, was you could ask Jeeves a question and get a response like you do now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, they weren't using artificial intelligence. They were just using, I guess, the precursor to a large language model.
Yeah.
Let's circle back on that one. We mentioned tariffs a little bit. Obviously, the president has come out and kind of went full circle over the last few weeks. We're going to put tariffs on Mexico. We're going to put tariffs on certainly on China and on Canada.
Don't forget Colombia.
And Colombia. And then there was some dialogue back and forth, and we're not putting tariffs on for some period of time, 30 days. I speculate that's what they've said. I mean, why are we putting tariffs on Canada?
All I can guess is something to do with trade and pass through from China. Obviously we have the USMCA and this free trade agreement essentially with them,
which is the updated NAFTA.
Yeah, there are some duties that still get paid, but for the most part it's a free trade agreement, we'll say, between our North American neighbors. And I've heard some little dribblings and things on Bloomberg about how they stopped communicating Canada with us on sort of trade that was coming in from China and what
you mean they stopped reporting data.
Somewhat.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it has to do with that because we don't have the same border problem that is our reasoning for Mexico with the drugs.
Well, so this is the thing. I can completely understand why you would use heavy-handed tactics to slow down the crossings at the border or remain on Mexico side. And certainly the fentanyl crisis. I mean, I know people that I went to high school that are no longer with us. I know people in my life whose family's been affected by fentanyl and certainly by the
opiate, crisis.
The whole opiate crisis. So I completely get the heavy-handedness in which the president is dealing with Mexico. But for some reason, I can't wrap my head around why we're treating our northern neighbor the same way.
Yeah, outside of that potential trade reasoning, I don't know. I don't think Trudeau and Trump like each other, so I think there's a little bit of an axe to grind there as well.
I mean, he's talking about making Canada the 51st state.
Yeah.
Of all the things that we could be talking about in this world, I mean, we can go to Canada anytime we want to. We don't need it to be a state to go there.
Yeah. About Greenland?
I read a headline that people are starting to warm up to that idea now. People in Denmark are starting to warm up to that idea.
Oh, everyone's in agreement. Who says no?
Yeah. I don't have any interest in traveling there. Iceland, maybe.
Either.
But
Iceland seems cool.
Yeah. Speaking of traveling, there was a stat out this week, and they're talking about the number of air passengers in 2025. The expectation is that they're going to top 5 billion passengers and over $1 trillion in revenue total worldwide in 2025. And it just seems like air travel is growing, and you have these ultra low costs airlines, which may or may not make it in the end, but they are really opening up air travel for people that maybe historically wouldn't be going that often or couldn't possibly even afford a single ticket.
Yeah.
And that seems to me great that people that haven't traveled before are traveling. I don't have a stat on how many first-time travelers are, but 5 billion people flying, that's just amazing. And then, of course, we had this horrible event happen at Washington Reagan
Yeah.
this past week, last week. And you think to yourself, wow, I could have been one of those people on there. We travel pretty regularly. We're on a plane. And it really kind of messes with your psyche when you see something like that happen. Even though I know from a statistical standpoint, in terms of lives lost over miles traveled, airlines seem to be the absolute safest, hands down, no questions asked. At the same time, when there is an accident,
Far more catastrophic.
ooh,
Yeah.
geez. And then there was the other one a few days later in Philadelphia.
In North Philly, I used to travel right by that every single day. So I lived in Manayunk for a couple years, and I would drive up, go down Henry Ave, and then up Roosevelt Boulevard, right past the mall there at Cottman. And that was pretty crazy. You saw some of those videos of like people sitting in diners and shrapnel coming flying in. Looked like a missile coming down. It was pretty wild.
Yeah. I mean, they were a full tank,
Yeah.
right?
Just took off.
Avgas or jet fuel. And I think they were only 4 miles away from where they lifted off. Coming back to the States here and not so much travel, I had an interesting experience this week, late last week, doing some Christmas returns. Did you do any returns?
You know, I initiated some online returns and I didn't follow through. I got like a message from eBay, your order expired.
Oh, I had the same thing happen. I bought some shoes for my wife on Amazon. I bought them on December 8th. Good husband, right? A little bit early,
Planning
all that
ahead.
stuff. Obviously, Christmas is 25th. She didn't try them on until like the week after. And then kind of we went back and forth on whether we were going to return them. And it was, I don't know, January 10th or something. She said to me, well, yeah, let's return it. They don't fit properly.
Too late.
And well, not even at that point. Then I waited another 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I went to return it, and there's no option for the return after 30 days.
Oh, yeah.
So I was a little bit irritated on that one. But I did do some actual store returns. We have a Macy's near us. I went back, tried to return something. They said I didn't have the credit card that it was put on, but I had the rewards phone number, Macy's rewards card, and they said they couldn't do it. So I was a little bit irritated. In the same shopping center is Dick's Sporting Goods, and I went over there, and I was able to return it, no problem. I think I had the receipt on that one. I know I had the receipt on that one and the card it was bought on. And so I do the return, and the young guy hands me a receipt and then something else, and he says to me, hey, this is a coupon. It's good for the next 3 hours in the store only, not online. I look at it, and it's a 15% discount coupon to Dick's Sporting Goods for the next 3 hours. And I didn't stand there and contemplate it, but I walked around a little bit thinking, that's an interesting thing that they do. It makes you want to take a walk around the store, in which I did, walked around the entire store. The 15% wasn't enough to get me to buy something. I could have bought some golf balls or a golf glove or something like that. I didn't pull the trigger on anything, but it's an interesting concept that they're trying to come away with.
They didn't want to lose out on that sale that you're returning, so let's get something above our profit margin that we can sell.
Yeah, exactly. I would have probably bought something with a bigger discount, and I was thinking, maybe in that 25% range. I think that would have gotten me to buy a jacket, maybe, or some ski gloves or something like that. 15%, I don't know. But I'm curious if that is Dick's Sporting Goods only, or if we're going to start to see that throughout the retail world.
So I know I don't know if it's still going. There was for a period of time with Amazon, if you return something to Kohl's, from Kohl's, you would return it, to this special, little desk and they'd give you like a 10% off.
Oh, they did?
For returning an Amazon item to Kohl's. Kohl's would give you a 10% off coupon just like that to use in store. I don't know if it was a week expiration date or whatever. I don't think it was 3 hours.
Yeah.
Like the Dick's Sporting Goods. But so some people are trying it. There must be something to it.
I looked it up. There's the estimate is that it's going to be 800. The United States Retail Federation, I think it is. They estimate $890 billion in returns for Christmas goods.
That's needle moving. That's
I mean,
pretty wild.
but what does it say about us as gift givers? We are horrible gift givers.
Yeah.
And I mean, like you and I, we are horrible gift givers, but it's not just us returning $890 billion. Like that's a lot of returns.
Yeah.
So
I wonder what percentage of that is people got the same gift. Because like, okay, with kids, like I find family, you have an aunt on this side of the family and an aunt on that side of the family, and you end up getting two of the same thing, whether it's a book or an item of clothing. There's only so many items of clothing that draw your eye, and there's only so many places to shop at. So I wonder, like maybe 10% of those were duplicative, accidental purchases.
10% of the 890.
Yeah,
I mean, it's possible.
Then the other is just us being trash gift givers.
Right. I think that's what it is. Having to buy something for the sake of giving it. And I'm not anti-Christmas. I think Christmas is a fun holiday and I love giving gifts. I don't like the pressure of giving gifts. I don't like having to get every single person a gift. Did I get you anything last year? No. Oh, did I?
You got me something this year. I know. Thank you.
I like it when it's I like to get gifts for people, but I don't feel like I have to get people a gift.
You also got Nolan and Livia Saquon Barkley shirts, so they thank you.
Yeah, okay. Well, we do have a Super Bowl coming up this weekend.
We do. Go Birds.
Right? I was on the phone with somebody earlier today, and we were talking about it, and that particular gentleman didn't really care. He said he was just going to watch it either way. He's a football fan, but he didn't. It wasn't.
Where was he from?
He's from South Florida.
Oh, okay.
So he wasn't.
They don't even care about when their team's in it. They're just happy with their weather down there.
Are you going to do anything special for Super Bowl?
So it's my brother-in-law's birthday party that day. So we're just doing a family thing, rolling that birthday party into a Super Bowl party.
Yeah, there you go. I saw a few articles talking about the price of the Super Bowl tickets really coming down over last year.
I saw that.
What do you think that has to? Do you think that means anything? Can you extrapolate anything out of that?
I think Chiefs fans are sick of being in the Super Bowl, so they're not willing to pay up again. And us Philly people are apparently cheap. That's what I take away.
Oh boy, I don't necessarily agree with that one, but I agree with the first part of that one. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about today?
No, just two random things. We won't go full dive into inflation, although we got some inline numbers on PCE last week, so nothing that really moved the needle. 2.6 headline, 2.8 on core. But coffee has had its longest winning streak in 45 years on the supply concerns we're seeing. Wonder what would have happened if things did go south with Colombia. We had threatened 25% tariffs, and in a week going up to 50%. Pretty sure they are probably, I think they're like the second or third largest supplier for coffee beans for the U.S. So we avoided that, but the price is still going up. And then obviously everyone knows the avian flu situation going on with chickens. I forget the exact number. I think it's like something ridiculous, like 100 million chickens or something have been culled to avoid the spread. But
somebody was telling me they paid like over $8 for a dozen eggs. And I don't necessarily look at all the prices that I pay in the grocery store, but that seems pretty expensive to me.
Yeah, they're probably getting the organic free range. Never got rained on.
Never
chickens.
got rained on
yeah,
chickens?
I don't know.
I'm okay with the organic
it's up.
chickens.
You're still getting a good bang for your buck with eggs, regardless in terms of protein per dollar. I mean, it's not like you're buying it's equivalent with buying a steak or something.
You know what's really good? 7-minute egg. You can do it on anything. 7-minute egg, like halfway between a soft-boiled egg and a hard-boiled egg. Highly recommend it. A little salt, pepper on a piece of toast with some butter.
Never had.
Never had a 7-minute egg?
No.
You're going to have to try it. On that note, everybody, hey, thank you so much for joining us. I'm always saying this these days. It's the beginning of the year. Take a look at your beneficiary information on your 401ks, your IRAs. Think about maxing out your 401ks if you can. If you have questions, comments, concerns, anything that we talked about today, please don't hesitate to send us an email at marketenthusiast@goodlifefa.com. We'd love to answer your question on the air. And for Good Life Companies and myself and Chris Needs, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly.